Hello, I'm John Robinson and this is Samples to Symphonies. Here's a map of Gustav Holst's Jupiter. It's the score, zoomed right out. On the left is the start, on the right the end, at the top of the flutes and piccolos, at the bottom the strings. Here's the key to the themes. Here it's playing back. This map is from my video, imaginatively titled Mapping Holst's Jupiter, where I surveyed and named Jupiter's three big themes: Thackstead, Joybringer and Headbanger, and the mixture of motifs, patterns and textures that surround them. But knowing the parts and where they are doesn't tell you how the whole thing works. When we scratch the surface, we find Jupiter has an unexpected strangeness, and that makes it fascinating to dig deeper. Holst said the planets are mood pictures. Although they're foils to each other, there's little contrast inside each one. So Jupiter, the bringer of jollity, has the lively playfulness we've been hearing as it moves through the different themes and textures. And that's the mood of Jupiter. Until we get to this. What is this tune, Thackstead, played like this, doing in the bringer of jollity? It's right in the middle too, like all the other themes and fragments orbit round it. I think there are four Jupiter mysteries. The one at the core is this tune. It just doesn't fit. Why is it even there? The first possibility is it shouldn't be. Holst claimed each planet had a consistent tone because that's what he'd intended, but he also had this great tune he wanted to fit in somewhere, so he went through the possible places, the possible descriptions. War? Doesn't fit. Peace? No. Winged messenger? No. Jollity? Good enough, so he just bunged it in. That possibility doesn't seem very respectful of Holst's abilities as a composer, but there's a long history of being quite brutal about what he did wrong in the planets, the criticism being led by Imogen Holst. Imogen was Isabel and Gustav Holst's only child. She was precocious as a musician and became a composer, arranger and conductor in her own right. Here's some footage of Imogen from the 1980s. It's taken from a half-hour documentary available on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description, which I think is still the best introduction to the music of Gustav Holst.
People say, oh, did it take 2 whole years to write one work? But the poor man was still earning his living, teaching 3 schools, and having spent all day in a school, would then get onto a bus and go to Morley College and teach his grown-up amateurs, choir and orchestra, composition classes in the evening. And the only time he had for composing then was at weekends and in the month of August. So if you think of the planets written in weekends in the month of August, it's astonishing that way round that it was done so quickly.
Imogen shared Gustav's gifts as a teacher as well as a musician, and when you read what she wrote, it comes over, like this footage, as cheerful, brisk, insightful and warm. She loved and was loyal to both her parents. Alongside her own contributions to music, she was the chief chronicler and explainer of her father's life and work. Her main biography of Gustav, here's a fairly modern edition, is cited extensively by all the other serious biographers. It's the definitive source, and she also wrote this more accessible version. What concerns us here, though, is the book she published in 1951, The Music of Gustav Holst, 1985's revision of that book, and the 1983 Holst's Music Reconsidered. All Imogen's books cover the breadth of Gustav's work, and she wanted to explain and promote some of his lesser-known pieces. By mid-century, the public knowledge of Holst had been dominated by the planets for over 20 years, yet Imogen, and reportedly Gustav himself, thought it far from his best work. Imogen is prepared to point out the strengths and weaknesses of every piece from every stage of Gustav's career. For most of the planets, she gives balanced criticism, pluses and minuses, but comes down hard on Jupiter. The first mystery of Jupiter is why Thaxted is into it. The second mystery is why Imogen isn't. She talks of its many irritations, including banal repetition and jokes that fail to come off, the many weak moments and some distressing vulgarity. Of the Joybringer theme, she says it's clumsily cheerful but lands where it started without us having had any real enjoyment. Of Headbanger, she says it sounds like Holst but has no growth to justify all those repetitions. Its increased speed is another of the irritations. On Thaxted, she's a bit more equivocal, blaming its problems in performance on the way it was associated in patriotic English audiences' minds with I Vow to Thee, My Country. Yet, even with Thaxted, she manages to pick on a tiny feature, this note, which people probably wouldn't notice if she didn't grumble about it. Imogen may have changed her mind. In the 1985 edition, published after she died, the chapter on the planets has the whole Jupiter section excised. There's a note in the text. Go and look in one of the notes at the back, so you dig through the endnotes and finally come to this, a summary of the old section. The editors explained that Imogen had deleted the section but not supplied anything to replace it. So they offered a shortened version of Imogen's original comments, but comparing the abridged version with the full 1951 text shows the editor's queasiness about Imogen's earlier criticisms. Here's the text from the earlier book with green highlights to show what was kept in 1985. Look at what they're hiding. Maybe by the 80s, the status of the planets and Jupiter itself made these comments seem not just misguided but petty. Yet that's why they're fascinating. From all other evidence, Imogen was rarely that wrong and never petty. My guess is that Imogen's negativity about Jupiter is a reflection of her father. We know Gustav was annoyed at how often an abridged form of the Planet Suite was performed, and even more that the selection usually ended with Jupiter to give a happy ending. He said, "In the real world, the end is not happy at all." After he conducted the first acoustic recording of the planets in 1922, the record company used Jupiter as the lead single. Often he was asked to conduct just that one movement. Its popularity made him a celebrity composer, which he didn't like. He was an introvert. He didn't enjoy flamboyance. I think it's possible Imogen caught Gustav's antipathy about his most popular, showy, musical child, and that she eventually rationalised that into her diatribe of negatives and nitpicks. The 1985 editors wanted to shield Imogen from the appearance of being overcritical, but they also cut a vital clue to understanding Jupiter. In the original text, Imogen sums up, "It might not be so bad if all the jokes were meant to be grotesque, but Holst had no intention of creating a monster. He had been working at Handel's L'Allegro with his Morley College choir and orchestra, and he hoped that Jupiter was going to represent laughter holding both his sides, but it was beyond him." Her message is Holst fails on his own terms, but what she's given us for free is the clue, Handel's L'Allegro. A look at L'Allegro leads us from George Friedrich Handel to John Milton to William Blake and back to Gustav Holst. And it's more than just a clue. It's the key. It unlocks Jupiter. It explains why Thaxted is at the centre and much more. I'm going to look at Allegro in my next video and by the end decide whether maybe Imogen was right all along.